Alright guys, this is going to be a number one first part video to probably a 2 to 3 part how to paint your computer case tutorial. What I'm going to actually talk about in this video is basically just some of the supplies that you're going to need to get started, and pretty much that's going to be it for this video. I'm going to move on to the more in-depth process of how to do paint strokes, sanding, and buffing. Closer to probably the later second to third video. But to get started, what I want to talk about, I'm going to be go ahead and using this Supermicro. This is a 10-year-old Supermicro server case, which I was lucky enough to come across when a company I was doing computer work for was throwing it away. And as you can see, it's still a very functional case. Plenty of room. It's actually about the size of two mid or small ATX cases combined. Plenty of room for whatever you're going to put in it, and it is made of solid steel. This case is 10 years old, so they don't build them like this anymore. But with that age also comes a refinishing to make it look nice again. So that's what this video is dedicated to. Pretty much what I've done already to the case is you can see the internal frame structure has already been painted flat black, and what I did before that was a rough sanding with some 220 grit on the metal, and then I go ahead and clean that, dust it all out, and wipe it down, make sure that there's no dust residue prior to applying the flat black paint. This flat black paint is a very easy coating, goes on thick, and it covers really well. So I didn't use any primer on this case prior to painting it because the paint sticks very well already, and not only that, but the metal after it's sanded with 220 grit has a very good grit and grip capability for the paint. Next thing I want to talk about is the type of paint that I used, and I chose Rust-Oleum. I used crystal clear enamel for the clear coat, which you don't see on the internals because I only went with flat for the internal portion. But I used crystal clear for the clear coat there, Rust-Oleum enamel, and then Rust-Oleum flat protective enamel, and this is flat black. One of the key factors that you want to remember when painting anything is make sure you utilize the same paints, because the moment that you start to incorporate multiple types of paint, you get compatibility issues, or the possibility for compatibility issues, where you can cause reactivations of the paint, wrinkling, and cracking. Next thing you're going to want to do is I like to use one of these simple spray can trigger guns. It's about $5 or $6, and it really helps the painting process. You can attach it right to the top of a can. When you press this, that spray mechanism comes down, presses the button, and it allows you to do nice, clean, sweeping strokes with your paint. And again, Rust-Oleum is available pretty much everywhere, which is another reason why I got it. It's available at both Walmart and Home Depot. I got mine at Home Depot this time. Another thing you're going to want, a cleaner, of course, to clean the case with prior to the painting. You can use anything as chemical based as Windex down to Fantastic, Oxy Power, Strong stuff. I used this because I had it around the house already. If your case has any sticky stuff on it, any stickers, any glue of any kind, you can use Goo Gone spray gel. I definitely recommend getting this. It is a lifesaver. Really helps with the cleaning process of the case. The next thing you're going to want to get is some sanding paper. Now, I used a 220 grit on the metal, and as you can see here, this is all I've got left of the 220 grit because I've already used it to sand two sides of the case, the top, the front bezel, and the actual internals. And you can see here, it's very coarse. You can probably hear that. I then move up to a 320 and then a 400. So for the smoothing process, especially for the plastic bezel, prior to painting, if there's any kind of irregularities there, you're going to want to smooth it out so you don't get any dips or cracks or cuts in the finish. One of the sides in my case was very damaged, and as you can see over here, one of the sides had some very deep cuts in the original paint and scratches because this was actually being thrown away. And I had to sand down to the metal in many areas here on this particular side of the case to get it nice and clean. So this has been sanded down, wet sanded, all the way up to the 220 down to the 400. And as you can see here, this is white, but it's very smooth now as I've cleaned off all of the top layers of paint and even gone down to the metal in some areas where there was some damage to the paint surface. The back side of this has already been painted the flat black. This is a front side of the case after it's been painted and done, that has not had clear coat and hasn't had the final sanding and buffing done to it. So this is just the flat black, and as you can see on the other side here, this is the metal surface, and you can probably see some of these scratches in here from the sanding that I've done to promote adhesion of the paint, giving it a nice gritty surface. Okay, so next thing we want to get, after you've got that primary sandpaper for prepping the case, you want to go ahead and get some wet sanding paper to prep the paint surfaces in between layers, and also you want to go from 1000 all the way to 2000 grit. So I've got some 1000 grit here, and then I've got some 2000 grit, and this 2000 grit is actually used for sanding the clear coat after you're done, and then you'll buff that out with some rubbing compound. And since I just mentioned that, we'll go ahead and go to the rubbing compound. Now for a Super Tower case like this, I needed a little bit more sandpaper than most people will for the average job. Just remember that you want to get enough to be able to do the entire internal frame, the sides, the top, the front bezel, and sanding a metal case does take the grit off sandpaper pretty quickly, so get enough to help you out. The next thing you want to do is get some rubbing compound. Pretty much any rubbing compound will work except for the extremely heavy-duty rubbing compound, which is used to take off very heavy oxidized finishes. You don't want to get that stuff that comes in a paste like in the can. That's extremely heavy-duty and will scratch your clear coat, so you will not be able to get the scratches out of it. Go with a premium grade rubbing compound that is a squeeze tube softer gel, and it's not so heavy grit. Alright, the next thing you're going to want to do is obviously get some kind of a mask that filters out paint particles, so you're not breathing in paint particles into your mouth and into your nose. Anybody who's done a lot of paint work, if you don't use your mask, you'll notice that at the end the dust particles from the paint are around your nostrils and mouth. This will prevent that and also prevents you from breathing it in. However, there are some more expensive masks out there on the market that will provide better protection than even this mask will, and this mask was like $6. So the next thing you want obviously is some form of a tool. I use a standard Phillips head to take apart the case when in the portions that I need, possibly some pliers to remove pins or wires. Next, after you're done, you're going to want to get some microfiber towels for the buffing with the rubbing compound. Microfiber towels are extremely soft, and again, the fibers are micro, so they're not going to be scratching the paint as you're sanding, as you're buffing the scratches out with the rubbing compound. These also help for cleaning, and at the end, after your paint is all done, some sort of a wax or sealer. This is a liquid polish. I use this Turtle Wax Ice synthetic liquid polish to polish the case when I'm done, and I let the paint sit and cure for a couple of days before applying the wax. Another thing you want to consider getting is a Dremel. It really helps out with pretty much anything you're doing to a case as far as modifications go. Get yourself a nice 1mm or 2mm plastic drop cloth so you can protect the area around the area you're painting, so you're not getting overspray on everything. You might want to try to get an orbital buffer and polisher. This is a 6-inch model orbital buffer and polisher that I got for about $29 at an auto parts store. It's usually used for automotive finishes. This is actually going to be used for these large side panels of the case. So guys, pretty much this is the end of the first video. Join me for part 2, which should be coming up fairly soon. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Talk to you soon.